It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchendu. Thanks a lot for joining us. Very interesting week in the past week. Some positive news, some interesting news in the space of politics. We did hear from the IMF about Nigeria clearing its debts. It's brought up a lot of conversations about what that means. But I mean, the federal government will celebrate that, and we're hoping that that means good things going forward for Nigeria. The economy is struggling, like we all know, and any sort of positive news we can get from anywhere will be great. We also saw Mr. President visit Anambra State, and the state governor, Charles Chukwuma Soludo, did basically endorse Mr. President for the 2027 elections, which is still about 2 years away or less. And it's thrown up the conversation which everybody's been having for the last couple of weeks and months about all the defections that's happening and how the APC is slowly becoming, you know, the only party with any sort of base in the country. And that's what we're going to be talking about as we start the conversation today. I'm joined by Demola Olariwaju. Thanks for being here today. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, even though it's been a while. What's happening? What's happening?
I mean, I think it's the president, you know, being using the powers of his office to essentially try to play God, basically, over the polity. But it's unfortunate that even God doesn't operate that way. I mean, if you don't want to believe in God, God isn't going to force you to be on his side, you know. But the president seems to want everyone to be in the APC, and I think that's a very big problem for him politically, which I hope that, you know, he recognizes, or for the sake of Nigerians, I hope that he doesn't recognize, but it's definitely a very big problem on his part. But it's really the president using the powers of the presidency within the system to try and bring all politicians into APC, but that has never worked. I don't think it's a working
So just
strategy.
to get you clear, because a lot of people are saying that Nigerian politicians will go wherever, you know, the food is at the moment. So the perception for a lot of people has been, it's been voluntary by these people to want to go to where, you know, the bread is being buttered at the moment. But you were saying that this is a deliberate move by the president. How's that happening?
I believe it's very deliberate because, look, you start from Rivers, for example. You know, you look at the Fubara, you look at the Wike, you see the president. I mean, the very idea of the president having a Wike in his cabinet, you know, where there are more qualified APC members, but because there's a political alliance between himself and Wike, you know, he brings the man in, even though the man is from what is supposed to be an opposition party. So it's clearly the president. And then you look at a lot of these politicians who are defecting. There's usually, it starts with an EFCC allegation, you know, or an EFCC invitation or a probe, and then the next thing that happens is the politician is defecting to the APC. I think the president is quite aware of the fact that a lot of Nigerians are not happy with his government, and you know, he's trying to bring all the politicians into APC, regardless of whether these politicians are strange bedfellows. And I think, you know, it's a move that will backfire eventually. I think, you know, the dreams of a one-party state, I don't think is going to be realistic in Nigeria.
But we've said a lot of things were not realistic in Nigeria, and over the years, we found out many things are possible here. And we've seen it happening in a lot of African countries, even in countries outside the continent. So what's to say that that's not a brilliant move on his part? So
you look at the people he's bringing in. If we're going to break it down, in Lagos, for example, it's understandable that he wants to keep the Sanwo-Olu base on side, but also keep the Obasa base on side. But you look at a state like Kano and wonder how he's going to balance it between Kakwanso and Ganduje. And then the governor, you know, you have Ganduje with you as your APC chairman, and now you're trying to bring in Kwakwanso. Ganduje is definitely not going to be happy with that. In Delta, you know, you look at the fact that Okowa, the sitting governor, and all the others are now in the APC. But you look at those who have been APC members, the likes of the former DSP, Omo Agege, the likes of Festus Kiyamo, they are definitely not going to be happy with that. So I think what the president keeps on trying to do is to create this marriage of strange bedfellows. But they are called strange bedfellows for a reason. It's that they can't simply not operate together. You pick one, you lose the other. So I think, you know, that's what's going on. I don't think it's a very smart move on his part, you know, trying to bring everyone. At the end of the day, it's definitely going to backfire. Another thing I would like to, that I think, you know, is responsible for the moves is that the president has started politicking quite early because, like I said, he looks at it and feels, well, I'm not delivering in terms of government. I might as well try to politic my way out of this. But he's also reacting to, you know, talk within the polity of an opposition coalition. So, you know, and basically the opposition has nothing else to do except politic. But you are the president, you are the sitting president. Your best politicking is done with government policy. If the lives of the people are better, everyone will be singing second term for Bola Tinubu. But if the lives of the people are not better, then you resort to what he's trying to do, which is railroad all the politicians into APC and hope to have his way in 2027.
I mean, a lot of people are singing second time for Bola Tinubu, whatever their reasons are. We don't know. Now, just to push back a bit, the Wike situation, is it really on the president or on Wike, and how things played out with the PDP at the last election season? You know, with regards to whether Atiku Abubakar won the ticket and whether they wanted a certain person to leave the chairmanship because they didn't want two Northerners as presidential candidates and the chairman of the party. Is that on the president if this guy had issues with the PDP and decided to walk and align where he wants to? Well, so isn't that also possible that a lot of that is also what's happening? Well,
I think it speaks a lot about the personality of Nyesom Wike himself, which, you know, I mean, he's known to be who he is, you know. So that's about Wike. It speaks a lot about him. But then there's also the angle of the president himself willing to work with someone like that and appointing him a high-ranking member.
Yeah, most people will do that
within his ministerial. So where you've had that before in the past, especially under the Obasanjo government, there was an official partnership between the government and then the opposition. You know, the idea was, let's have a government of national unity so we don't give room for a military coup, because it was the first democratic experiment at that time. But ever since that time, people would resign. You know, one of the people that just left from Kebbi, for example, he was in the AMPP at that time when he was appointed FCT minister, but then he resigned his membership of the AMPP and became a part of the PDP. So, but when you have someone like Wike, which again speaks definitely to the fact that the PDP is failing as an opposition party, and that's why many people are looking forward to the opposition coalition, that look, can we find a political party that will provide an opposition to the Bola Tinubu regime? Because clearly PDP and so many other parties have been infiltrated and are failing, because you have Wike as a member of the PDP openly saying that he is going to campaign for a Bola Tinubu second term. That's clearly against the principles of opposition, but I think, you know, it also speaks to the character of the president, that even against his own party, I mean, APC members in Rivers State are clearly not happy with the fact that Nyesom Wike controls everything that comes from that state. You know, you had the likes of Tonye Cole, you had the likes of many APC members are clearly not happy, and they are definitely going to work or tend towards the opposition coalition, which is why I feel that, you know, it's not the best political move. Sometimes you want to have a clear idea of who your opponent is and who's on your side.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Mr. President, a lot of people are saying that this is him doing his machinations or whatever you want to call it. But when you talk to a lot of members of the APC, they tend to bring up President Obasanjo a lot. And in his time, it may not have been this blatant, but there were talks about how the EFCC and the ICPC were formed at the time, how he tried to capture the Southwest and almost completely, you know, did that. And, you know, talks about how he used his powers as well to try to make the PDP what the APC is today. But the one thing that stood out for a lot of people were that the governors and a lot of people in the opposition still tried to an extent to fight and stand up. That isn't happening now. So as much as we want to blame or, you know, talk about Mr. President, why are these people falling so quickly, so fast, so easily?
I think it's a sad commentary on most of the governors, the fact that the governors of this class do not exactly have the kind of spine that the governors of 1999 to 2007 had. But then again, you know, in terms of looking at the polity, as at the time that Obasanjo did a lot of those things, he did those things, the constitution was not exactly clear. I mean, these were people who were sworn in on May 29, 1999, without having read the constitution. So nobody came into office knowing exactly what the constitution said. A lot of the things Obasanjo did were experimental, you know, such as, you know, the imposition of a military administrator, the dissolution of the state democratic structure. And by the time they went to court, the court said, look, this is not the meaning of what the constitution says. You don't have the power to dissolve or to suspend a governor. So Bola Tinubu doing that now, after the courts have made that clear, that's why it appears illegal to so many of us. In Rivers State, for example, Obasanjo did it with so many states, but interpretations were got, and, you know, so a lot of things became clearer in democracy. For it to still be happening after 2 decades of experiment with democracy, I think, you know, it says a lot about the quality of leadership that APC is producing for Nigeria.
Let's talk about the PDP. And, you know, the party that was touted to be the biggest in the continent at some point, and how they're going to be in power for God knows how many years, and what it has become now. I mean, a lot of people will say this started off with the way things played out, like I said, in the last election cycle, and it hasn't come back since then. Do you think the PDP is done?
Well, that's it.
Because I mean, a lot of the heavyweights are out of the way.
Well,
the ones who are still there seem to be working, against the party. A lot of the leaders, we see tweets once in a while, but the pushback isn't what
it's not.
People expect.
It's clearly not what it is, and I think first of all, it's the fact that to have an opposition party, you need a certain kind of desperation. You need a certain kind of hunger. You need a certain kind of being in tune with the feelings of the people. Okay, and then politically, of course, yes, you need that kind of anger against the status quo, against the establishment. An opposition party is usually more purpose-built. Okay, so we come together and say we definitely want to build an opposition party that will oppose this government. What you have with the PDP is a party that was in power for 16 years, now trying to transform itself into becoming an opposition party. It's very difficult. The mindset shift is very difficult. A lot of people have spoken about how, El Rufai has been showing more fire these days. He's clearly angry. He's clearly upset. There's a passion in him. You can't see that passion in PDP because PDP, the system is essentially made to be a ruling party. So there needs to be a lot of tweaking. I think, as to whether PDP is done, I think there's still a lot there to fight for. I think that, the leadership of the party has to resolve the internal contradiction. You cannot have a Nyesom Wike serving as minister and still claiming to be a member of the PDP. You cannot have PDP governors openly coming out to say that they are going to work for the opposition. So PDP needs to resolve.
Why can't they suspend him?
Exactly. That's the question. I mean, that is where party discipline should come in. Let's even forget what happened in 2023. That you worked against the party. Let's say, okay, can we all agree that whoever we pick next in 2027, this person is not doing well enough for Nigerians. We are going to, put up our best fight against him. But instead, the party is acting like a satellite party for the APC, which is an unfortunate situation. But I think that, there will be politicians who will definitely be in opposition to Bola Tinubu, and I think that those politicians are looking at the polity right now, looking at PDP, looking at Labour Party, and saying, look, we need to find a party that is purpose-built for opposition. And I think that when the time is right, we'll see that opposition coalition.
Who's the leader of the PDP now? Do you think? Does the PDP have a leader?
So, well, I mean, there are different groups. There's a lot of PDP members who believe that they want to be in opposition to the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Those are, you could say, those are led by Atiku Abubakar, who I think, is doing quite well as an opposition leader within that space. And then there are PDP members who want to be aligned clearly with the government of the day, which is Nyesom Wike. So in a way, you could say that the real PDP that should be the opposition is led by Atiku Abubakar. But then there's also a PDP that wants to be, a lucky party, so to speak, or a satellite party for the APC. And that's led by Nyesom Wike.
Yeah. The other main opposition would be the Labour Party in this case as well. But even they have their own, the drama that's going on there with the leadership. There's a faction, there's a leader today, tomorrow we're hearing he's in court, he's out. It's very confusing. What's also happening there, these were the two major parties that gave the APC a fight, at least in the last election.
Well, combined, I mean, look, a lot of us looked at the numbers in the last election and felt that Bola Ahmed Tinubu managed only 36.6% of the votes, which is clearly a minority. It's not an absolute majority. Of course, it was the largest single vote share, but it's a minority. More people wanted the APC out than those who wanted the APC in. His Excellency Atiku Abubakar had 6.98 million votes. His Excellency Peter Obi had 6.1 million votes. That's clearly more than what Bola Tinubu had. And so most people look at it and say, look, why don't you guys combine forces against the next election? And a lot of us would like to see that happen. We'd like to see that coalition happen. I believe that, there are talks going on. And I think that if that happens, Nigeria will definitely see a semblance of clear opposition. The Labour Party is clearly in trouble. The PDP is clearly in trouble. There has to be a vehicle that has to be found. But for now, because of the way the last election played out, I think for me, even those party platforms may not be exactly what Nigerians should focus on. I think we should prefer to focus on individuals and know that, look, even if two people will abandon opposition, then we should expect that one of them definitely is Atiku Abubakar and the other is definitely Peter Obi, that these guys would always be in opposition. So wherever they say the opposition should coalesce, I think that's where we would be eventually.
What does this vehicle look like, though? Because do they coalesce into one of these two, or is a new movement supposed to be formed? Because like you mentioned, Malam Nasir El-Rufai as well seems to be leading one other part of things. He's left the APC. He hasn't joined any of the two. There's a number of politicians as well who are mumbling and grumbling and talking about this coalition. Are they coming into an already established party? Are the brands already tainted? Do we get a brand new one again? And how much time do they have? Because like we know, elections at least 2-3 years in Nigeria. Yes. You have to start the groundwork, and we're about less than 2 years away from the way things look now.
I think you know, one of the things that his supporters say is that, you know, Bola Tinubu is a master strategist or is a master tactician, but we never see that, you know, in terms of actual governance. But in terms of politics, I think the politicians also understand who they are dealing with, that this is a man who wants power for power's sake, and you know, they have to be smart about it. So I think a lot of things are being kept flexible for now, in terms of what the final destination will be. And because, you know, they are not sure exactly where it's going to come from, that's why you see the president trying to poach as many members as possible, as many people from the opposition. So I think they are keeping things a bit flexible. What I would say is, at the end of the day, look, we could have a repeat of the 1999 situation. Remember, in 1999, Olufalaye was a member of the Alliance for Democracy, and the candidate of the APP was Umaru Shinkafi, and eventually Olufalaye resigned his membership of the AD, joined the APP, and then picked an APP running mate. So I wouldn't be surprised if until the last minute, you even have two frontline opposition candidates, you know, which splits the forces of the president. They are attacking different people, and then eventually you have a coalition. So, for example, we might say in Osun State we are supporting, you know, the incumbent governor on the PDP platform, but in a state like Anambra, for example, we are supporting Charles Soludo. But of course, Charles Soludo has now declared this other way. So there's going to be that flexibility, okay? I think there's going to be that flexibility, and we have to be ready for it in terms of the polity because of the personality of who we are playing with, which again, I don't attach much relevance to, because if you are fighting so hard for power, then, like I said in the beginning, the best campaign for any incumbent government is your performance. If you perform well for the people, then the people will say, get a second term on the platter of gold. But we are not seeing that. What we are seeing instead is a master strategist. Please, can you master strategize the economy and make petroleum cheaper for me?
Very quickly, is there any fairness to the criticism some heavyweights who are supposed to be in opposition are getting about how maybe quiet they have been? We hear about President Goodluck Jonathan. We've heard about, you know, former Senate President Bukola Saraki, who are not necessarily pro this government, but are maybe not as vocal as people expect them to. Is that a fair judgment?
Well, I don't think it's a fair judgment, to be honest. I think there's a quote that comes to mind by George Bernard Shaw, where he said, lamenting the times without doing anything about them is a cheap show of wisdom. These are your times, and fighting the battles, righting the wrongs are a part of your battles. I think people need to step up for themselves. Let's not wait for, oh, Goodluck Jonathan hasn't spoken, this person hasn't spoken. Nigerians need to speak more about their anger and speak more. They might not be in the position of those people, or we might expect them to speak. But, you know, for whatever reason, I mean, it's politics. There's no, I mean, you have been there, you're leaving. It's okay if you don't want to comment, if you don't want to engage with the system. But we should focus instead on what, you know, the likes of Atiku Abubakar, the likes of Peter Obi are doing in terms of opposition, which I think, you know, they are doing quite well.
Well, one thing is for sure, the next year plus is going to be very interesting, and we'll see how things play out. Thank you very much, Demola, for being here today, giving us some clarity.